brace yourself, because it's none other than the unfiltered opinions and the captivating presence of Andrew Tate with the brilliant Patrick Bet-David for a thought-provoking conversation and an interview that I would like to share some of my takeaways with. Collision of ideas, perspective, and unapologetic truths. And I'm going to break this down into 3 different parts: power, culture, and God. And when it comes to power, Andrew really made an emphasis on you have to be careful when you have power. What do I mean by that? Or what does he mean by that? Is that when you have a lot of power, you have to be careful on how you use it against people, because it can cause a revolution. And this has been done many times when you look at the European revolutions, when you look at the American revolutions. It started a little bit, they had this power and they kept going a little bit further and a little bit further, a little bit more taxes, a little bit more taxes, until ultimately the underdogs, which was America before it was America, the founding fathers, were willing and able to revolt against the most mighty power that was Great Britain. And so when you keep enforcing your power against people, eventually there's going to be a revolution. There's going to be people that stand up and fight, push back. And it makes a good point when you have Andrew Tate, who his audience are young men. Who are the people that typically fight when it comes to revolutions and wars? Typically young men. So you want to be careful as far as the powers that be that are going up against him, how much power they use. And when you jail him and ostracize him, who do you think that's affecting? Who do you think that's making angry? It's his audience, and they're young men who are willing to do whatever it takes to support this man. The powers that be are what he would consider to be the matrix. They have to be careful on how they wield that power, because they're going up against those who they would want on their side, because those are the young men are the ones that fight in revolutions. And when you think about this too, you can think about it in your own personal lives. You may not have power when it comes to government, or you may not have power when it comes to the amount of influence that Andrew Tate has. I mean, his and Patrick's interview has over 10 million views in 10 days, which is insanity of how many eyeballs that it's gotten the attention of. So you may not have that influence, but you can still have or be in positions of power, whether it be within your relationships, your family, or within business. And if we were to talk about power from a position of business, when you're a leader, you have to be careful on how authoritative you come off to those beneath you, because you can cause and create resentment within people on your team or within your company. So you have to really be careful on how much power you may be the leader, but how much are you pushing them? To what extent are they giving? It has to be somewhat of a give and take, because if you're too authoritative in business, you're not going to keep good people. You're going to be one of the entrepreneurs that are always blaming others why things aren't working out, or it's my team. Maybe it's ultimately you. And that's the thing about people who have a lot of power. They tend to be, or they could be, around a bunch of yes men or people that may be afraid to stand up against them. And so they keep using more and more of their power, and they're either losing their best people or they're causing resentment. And when you're in business, you won't keep good people. You'll lose them. And you'll probably cause resentment, and they're no longer with your team. If you're in positions of power within government, you can cause a revolution. So you have to be careful on how much power you use, and when you use it, and how you use it. And Andrew Tate said that they made a mistake as far as canceling him when it came to social media, because it just made him more famous. And then putting him in jail, same thing, making him almost a martyr. Same thing with Donald Trump. When they canceled him, gave him more support. Now that they're looking to convict him, he has more support. So a lot of times when you are in those positions of power, when people are in those positions of power, them continuing to use more of it actually has the opposite effect. So they're trying to silence someone, and because they're doing that, it's creating the opposite effect where they're getting more eyeballs, they're getting more attention. And so when you use your power, you have to think strategically, not just about yourself and why you want to use it, what could be the repercussions of that. And in the movie I recently watched called Nefarious, definitely recommend. It's a philosophical movie, Good and Evil, really nicely done. And they talk about a part in that as an atheist, or as the devil, not an atheist, when they were speaking about the devil, they were talking about demons and the devil. Their biggest mistake was the cross, the crucifixion. And the reason for that is because they made Jesus a martyr, and he made him more famous, and Christianity grew. And he is someone who is known by many religions and looked up to, and he is admired by he is now the ideal. And they say that was a mistake. And so you have to be careful on who you use power against and what could be the repercussions. And so when he said that, you have to be really comes to power. And people have power. Governments have power. Business owners have power. In relationships, you have power. How are you wielding that power, and be aware of that? And with that, one of the things, he got put into jail. I thought this was a super interesting point. When he was put into jail, he obviously had no phone. And so he was sharing his experience that when you go without a phone, you realize how loud your thoughts are. Because today we grow up in an age where we have technology on us all the time. And so if you don't want to think about something, you can go on Instagram, you can go on social media, you can go on your computer, you can ultimately redirect your attention to something else. You don't have to think about that thought. Well, when you don't have your phone, you realize that your thoughts can be very loud. And when that happens, you realize how powerful the mind is. Can you imagine being with no phone and no conversations with anyone for 60, 90 days? You would really tap into the extraordinary mind of humans, our human mind. And with that, I can only imagine how much wisdom came of that experience with him, how much internal work you do because you're lost in your thoughts. You can't escape them. And therefore you're reflecting. You think about it, if you were to ever read the book from Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn about the Gulag Archipelago, well, when he was in his thoughts, what came of that was him reflecting and being intuitive of the whole situation, and how the revolution and everything that came of it came full circle to how he was a part of it, and how some of his decisions and reflecting on the whole situation, on how he actually impacted the evil that came to be, which was known of the Gulag Archipelago. And so what do I mean by that? Well, because when you start going deep and doing the internal work, you realize the flaws of humans, the mistakes you may have made, but you also, through that, gain clarity and wisdom. Andrew being without a phone, without distractions, with everything going on, I can only imagine what he was able to tap in when it came to his mind and his ability to think and process things, and the wisdom that has been developed within him now that he had that time to think. And with that, I think everyone could probably use some time away from the phone. It's hard because we live in such a fast-paced world, especially in business and everything else. However, I don't know if one can fully tap into the human mind and the capacity without having that time away from, to really go deep into your mind and your soul and to meditate and reflect. So I thought that was super interesting, because so many of us will never know what it feels like to go without a phone or technology to that capacity for that long of a period of time, to really be lost in your thoughts, and to, like he mentioned, your thoughts are pretty loud, but we're constantly distracted. And so taking that time to be alone, to be away from technology, to really process things was a major takeaway for me, because when you allow your mind to wander and to settle, you really realize a lot about the world and yourself, and you're able to go deep into your soul and figure out the meaning of life and process things. But without that silence or that sense of peace, you'll never be able to tap into that. And therefore, that's why we lack wisdom in today's society. We don't have time to just think, where when you look in the past and those who created societies, they did have that capabilities to a standpoint where they read and they thought, and they actually put time to think and process things and to come up with ideas and to come up with philosophies. And with that, created a sense of wisdom. And so we live in societies like here in America, built off the backs of men who were wise. And now we're in a culture today where I believe we're actually lacking wisdom. And I think that's very obvious when you look around. And that brings me to my second point about culture. We lack standards. We don't even have or agree upon objective truths, things that are known and accepted by everyone, that have been forever in decades. We don't agree on what is beauty. We don't agree on the nuclear family and the values and principles. We don't believe in biology, or we don't agree in biology as a society writ large. Now, I think more people than not probably do, but it just goes to show that there are things that we can't objectively agree on as a society because we don't have those objective truths and standards. Therefore, we are witnessing our culture corrode. And so when it comes to standards, he was sharing that when you lack standards, you lack guidance. When you lack standards or you don't have standards, that's when things start to corrode. And he was sharing it in multiple perspectives, but I feel that when it comes to lacking standards or these objective truths, things that we in the last few years have been more polarized for, Tate made a good point that we think that when something happens. Let me give you an example. Feminist women who say they don't like the strong masculine men and women are the same, women can do the same things as men. Well, as soon as something happens where they need a man to save them, whether it be in a, someone's attacking them, or they're under, they're under duress because they're being physically assaulted or have potentially will be. Well, what do then women want? They want a man to protect them. So the same feminists that may not like the masculine man, when shit hits the fan, that's who they want, the masculine man to come protect them. And so it makes you think, are there objective truths? Are there innate truths and objectivity all of us actually do believe in? And it's just something biological and innate within each and every one of us. But we have been programmed over time, slowly, and then, at a time until it was all consuming of our culture, where we have been programmed to think that there aren't objective truths, to think that some of these things are real or could be real, but we haven't actually had the time to process it and see if it makes sense, because we haven't gone 30 to 60 days without a phone where we actually have to think about issues. We can just go on social media, and social media tells us this is the truth. That means without standards, you don't have, and then we're humans, so we're kind of crazy and we can believe a lot of things. And if you don't have a core foundation of beliefs, then there's nothing you really stand for. What do you think? You stand for nothing. If everything is accepting and you accept everything, you don't stand for anything. You have no values and principles. And that comes to, how does it get to that point? The power of influence. Who has had the most influence over the last generations, who have been cultivating a little by little the attention and the mindset of each generation in our youth, to now where we're living in a time where we don't agree on objective truths that have been true for all of mankind till today. That is the power of influence. That is the power of speaking and being able to communicate your ideas. And he shared his perspective on communication and mastering communication. And it's so funny because he's like talking about learning different languages, because his father knew multiple languages. And he said that he asked his father, I believe, to teach him German, I think it was. And so he said that he didn't know English. So now he has this app called Vocabulary where he learns words every single day. And it's so funny because everyone at Valuetainment now has this app. I can show you right here, where we're all learning words because we're like, man, we don't know English either. And so learning to be more articulate, to communicate ideas. And he shared when to know to be persuasive, when to know to debate, when to be offensive, when to be obtuse, when to be agreeable. Sometimes you need a little bit more honey than you do needing to debate someone. Sometimes you can debate someone gently. Sometimes it has to be a little bit more authoritative or aggressive. But knowing how to navigate those different conversations, knowing how to articulate your ideas, if you're able to articulate your ideas and you gain influence, that is ultimately power. Then when you have that power, you have to be careful on how you wield that power. And so with that comes with when you think of attention and influence, how competitive it is in the marketplace today. Everyone's competing for influence. Everyone's competing for the ideas. And he made a great point that the top percentage now articulate, if you're able to communicate your ideas, if you have that power of influence, that competition, you have to stay relevant. You have to keep getting better, because not only are you going to compete with the best of the best for the people that want to compete, the top 10%, you're also going to be competing with AI. Because as technology grows, I mean, you look at what's happening within jobs when it comes to writers, when it comes to people working on things that now can be done by AI, news articles, captions, editors. A lot of this can be done by technology. So if you want to compete in the marketplace, you have to get better, and you have to get better faster, because the world is only going to become more and more competitive. And so with that comes, are you able to, as a human being, handle competition, ultimately handling pressure? Those are things to work on for yourself. How articulate are you? Can you communicate your ideas? How well can you do it? Because everything is competition in life, whether it be business, whether it be relationships, whether it be politics, whether it be influence. So how competitive are you, and what skill sets do you have to develop to be more competitive in the marketplace so you can live a fulfilled life? And with that, I want to go to my third point, because when it comes to competition, the world is always and has always been competing when it comes to the world of religion. Religions are always competing, and whether people admit it or not, everyone has a religion. And I don't mean just, either you're Jewish or you're Christian or you're Muslim. Everyone has a form of religion, whether you're atheist or I'm just spiritual. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I'm not religious, but I believe in the stars and the moon and the sky and the energy. That's a form of a religion. When you think of the environment, Mother Nature, everyone has their form of the standards that you have, or the standards that you uphold, or the standards you say you believe in. You may not uphold them. The who you respect, what you respect, the values and principles that you hold. And with that, that'll identify what it is that is ultimately your form of religion, because human beings innately they yearn for that. Whether it's everyone will say a higher power or energy, the atmosphere, the Mother Nature, these other sources, these sources that are not materialized have power. Everyone feels a sense of that. That's a form of religion. And that's something innate in each and every human. So if you're not, or if you don't identify with a religion, with a God, that's feeling is still within you. So you're going to gravitate, and that hole that is a God or a religion that's identified is still going to be open, and therefore it is going to be filled by something. And so to be aware of that as a human. And he mentioned he recently went through the transition from Christianity to Muslim, and it's not conversion, I think it's reversion is how he said that it was done, or that's the proper term when it comes to being a Muslim. And he mentioned that with Christianity, it came to the point where they didn't have standards, and they would tolerate everything, and therefore they didn't really stand for anything. When you tolerate everything, you don't have standards, well, then you don't really have a religion, you don't really have a culture. And so he went through that process of reversion. I think that's what it's called, reversion. And now learning the religion of being a Muslim. But part of that comes with, he mentioned he really liked the standards that they upheld. And so I find that to be super fascinating, because it is true. If you don't have standards, if you don't have these guidelines, what do you really have? And that comes for business too. If you think about businesses, if you don't have a culture, if you don't have standards, you have chaos. You don't have people that are aligned, and you need people aligned. If you have a vision, if you have values, if you have principles, you have to have alignment in order for those things to come to fruition. Could you imagine being on a team where none of you share the same values and principles? You don't even have shared goals. You're not going to go to get to the destination. So you have to have a core fundamental foundation, and that's based off of standards, values, principles, respect. And really, when it comes to, he mentioned another thing, what is respect without fear? Because if you respect someone, there is a level of fear. Let's say from your parents, there's a level of fear. If you have respect for your parents, you're fearful because you don't want to do wrong by them. When you think about your boss or leaders, there's a level of fear because of your respect for them, you don't want to do them wrong. You want to come through. That comes from a level of fear. When you think of God, there is a level of fear because fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. What does that mean? It's if you fully have belief and faith in God, that there is a God, and that each person, that this, if you fully believe that there is a God, what do I mean by that? Everything that you do is known by him. And eventually you're going to come to that day of judgment. And so if you fully believe that, then you live as if God exists. It's because there's a level of fear, knowing that you're going to come to that day of judgment, and everything that you've ever done is going to be known. And so you act as if God exists, that someone's always watching. You're going to have that day of judgment. A level of wisdom comes with that, because there's going to be things that you maybe would have done if you didn't believe that you're not going to do, because you know or believe it to be true that there's going to be a day of judgment where everything you've ever done was known. And so a level of wisdom comes with that, because we can be cultivated by pleasures and persuaded by them, but it doesn't mean we have to act on them, knowing that something, I believe, God is watching us. And so you have to have a level of fear to have a level of respect. And that comes from religion, that comes people. And to have a level of respect, it can't be easy. It's difficult to acquire respect. It comes from sacrifice. It comes from a level of moral authority, and moral authority comes from experience. It comes from winning. You think of business. Who do you respect? From the leader standpoint, I'm within the consulting division here at Bet-David Consulting, working for Patrick Bet-David. And if you're in sales, you know that you respect sales leaders that have the moral authority. They've done what you're doing, and they've done it at an exceptional level. That's why you respect them. If they don't, and they haven't, and they're not capable of doing what you're doing, you don't respect them. And so it comes with a level of experience, sacrifice. It's not easy. If you have respect, you earned it. Hopefully, if you really want real respect, you had to have earned it. And it's difficult to acquire respect. And with respect, it can't come without a level of fear. And ultimately, he shared that everything that we're going through today, when it comes to power, when it comes to governments and what he considers the matrix, to take too much power, they think they give us our rights when really our rights are given to us by God. When it comes to our culture and the corrosion of our culture, the solution is really God. And when it comes to power, our rights are given to us by God. Our freedom is given to us by God, not the matrix, not the powers that be. When it comes to standards, religion and God, whether you're, the Old Testament, New Testament, Quran, all of these religions come with a framework and standards to live by, to give you a guideline, a roadmap throughout life that is given to us by God. Morality, it's not created by man, because then there is no objective truth. It's created by God. When it comes to culture, and if you were to live by the standards and you were to live by the framework of what I would say the Bible, you have a culture that has shared values and principles and a foundation that is given to us by God. When you think of the family, if you have core beliefs in God in the nuclear family, to honor thy mother, to love thy neighbor, like all of these are the foundation, the roadmap of how to have the power given to us by God. Therefore, it can't be taken away from us by man. You have a culture that has standards because it's given to us by God, the roadmap on how to live our lives. And you have a shared values and principles, objective truth that would eliminate a lot of the problems that we have here today. I could go on and on about this interview and the philosophical depth that they discuss. It's so good. You have to check it out. And these are topics that I love to talk about because they're super important when it comes to what we're going through today, but all of society. It's really normal when you look at history. There's never fully peace. There's always that battle between good and evil ideas. It's just those who are able to articulate those ideas, to be influential, to bring back the core values and principles. And that's why yesterday we were just at an event with Patrick and 25 CEOs that flew in for one of his elite masterminds in person, and he was sharing on the vision of valuetainment, and he's going to build the largest media company the world has ever seen, where we have the capacity through Patrick and other influencers to communicate ideas of freedom, capitalism, God, values, principles, family, that are able to shape the hearts and minds of societies, of culture. And therefore, once we have that and we have their attention, we're influential. We also have the consulting division, which is providing community, proven systems, strategies for the entrepreneurs who we believe to be the heroes to grow and scale their businesses, because they're the ones that give opportunities. They're the ones that give freedom, financial freedom to their families, to their communities, to societies. When you have media, you have business. And through that, we're going to develop and create education systems, schools, where we're educating the next generation by people who have shared values and principles. They have built organizations. They have hard and soft skills. When you have media, when you have business, when you have education, you can then influence the next generation. And that's what we're going to be doing here. And so with the power of Patrick Bet-David, who gave an interview to someone who was so influential, got as much eyeballs as they have, and we're just getting started because the enemy is real, and so is the vision. So those are just some of my thoughts of a wonderful interview that I highly recommend go checking it out. It's 4.5 hours, but it went by like this, super captivating, and it's just a great conversation. We need to take time to think and analyze the situations and everything that we're going through. So curious on what all of you thought. Leave your comments below. Would love to learn more. And if you have interest in learning more about what Patrick is doing by building this media empire, building out a consulting division or consulting company, which will be a $1 billion consulting firm, where we will have the best business minds from across the world, all different industries, all across the globe, come together to grow and eventually open up schools where we can influence the next generation. DM me or email me at Taylor, and that's Tayler @valuetainment.com. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.